From ABC News, World News Sunday. Substituting for Forrest Sawyer, here's Carol Simpson.
Good evening. The first one came before dawn, 7.4 on the Richter scale. And before Southern California had time to recover, a second quake hit, measuring 6.5.
California knows earthquakes. The Pacific coast has nearly been destroyed or erased altogether a few times by quakes over the centuries. Hi, I'm Chris May, writer, producer, and host of This Day in Weather History, now in year 2 from the Weather Network in Canada. But with all that history, did you know that 2 of the strongest earthquakes to ever hit California did so on the same day, June 28, 1992, This Day in Weather History? Worst case scenario is an earthquake in a densely populated city center. So, for 2 to strike the desert area just east of Los Angeles, California, would have been cause for justified panic and chaos.
The earth rippled and shook for as long as a minute. Some California veterans said it was the worst quake they ever felt.
I have been through quite a few earthquakes, and this is the worst I've ever been through.
I reached over and I grabbed my wife, and we started praying and said everything will be okay.
Remember, I have a podcast episode coming up that remembers the 1989 World Series earthquake that interrupted the Fall Classic between, ironically enough, the only 2 teams in all of Major League Baseball that happened to have their homes on the San Andreas Fault. The 2 teams in the World Series were representing the East Bay, Oakland Athletics, and representing the West Bay, the San Francisco Giants. So that happens. Then only 3 years later, this happens.
2 powerful earthquakes rock Southern California.
Oh, God, forever and ever and ever. I thought it never stops.
In Yucca Valley, a wall of a bowling alley collapsed. Down the road, the roof of the Kmart store fell in. A trailer park was tossed, and near Big Bear Lake, a house burned out of control. The second quake sent clouds of dust shooting out of the San Bernardino Mountains, and rock slides closed the roads. Los Angeles television stations were reporting the first quake when the second hit.
Those who had their alarm clocks set for a 5 a.m. wake-up were rudely and abruptly shaken out of bed just before 5 a.m. on a Sunday morning. But if there was a lucky break, it was that Landers is an area that is very sparsely populated, so the damage was limited and relatively minor considering the intensity.
The earthquakes rattled Los Angeles, but there was little damage. A lot of merchandise was shaken from store shelves. Some buildings suffered structural cracks, and power lines snapped in several areas, leaving about 27,000 homes without electricity.
Residents in LA reported that the rolling and shaking continued for nearly 1 full minute. The tremors were also felt in the states of Arizona, Nevada, and Idaho. But it was not over. The other shoe was about to drop hard.
The head of the National Earthquake Information Center, Dr. Waverly Person, said aftershock should continue for at least 48 to 72 hours.
We've got a big aftershock coming in right now. One that's coming in now is probably in the magnitude 4.5 to 5 range. They are continuing.
Over 3 hours later, there was a second hit. This was at 6.3 magnitude, and at any other time, it would have been considered a legitimate earthquake. But because it followed one that registered stronger than that, it was officially recorded as an aftershock. Can you imagine an aftershock strong enough to level most modern cities?
We've had some pretty good aftershocks here all afternoon long. California Governor Pete Wilson toured the area by helicopter and stopped off to speak to the press. He declared a state of emergency in San Bernardino and Riverside counties. And Carol, while he was speaking, there was another aftershock.
This quake did a lot more damage than the first one, though. It caused fires to break out, resulting in, sadly, 3 deaths in an area close to the original epicenter. And the injuries piled up as well. In all, and between the 2 quakes, 400 people were injured and the damage was extensive. The quakes triggered landslides, wiped out roads, and opened up a 44-mile or 71-kilometer-long rupture in the earth. It was the biggest in California since the 1906 San Francisco quake. And I should really do a podcast episode on this. More than 3,000 people lost their lives and more than 28,000 1,000 buildings were destroyed, costing around $500 million, 1906 US dollars. So although major earthquakes may be rare in modern times, they have happened, and when they did, it was as close to the big one as anyone ever wants to get. And it happened twice on this day in weather history. Tomorrow is June 29th, and we are going way back in time for this one. On June 29th, 1826, Thomas Jefferson, the third sitting president of the United States of America, made his last entry in his, get this, weather observation log just 6 days before his passing. And that's tomorrow, on this day in weather history, with me, your host, Chris May.